My mother tried to take my inheritance away, claiming it belonged to the family that raised me. At the legal meeting she arranged to pressure me, I responded with a surprise she didn't see coming. I'm 28 years old, male, and I work as a diesel engine mechanic for a trucking company in the Midwest. I've been there for 6 years, and I earn a good living repairing trucks and heavy machinery. It's honest work. I get dirty, I fix problems, and I go home tired but satisfied. I live in a small apartment with my dog, Rex, and drive a somewhat old but well-maintained 2015 Silverado. My life is simple. My family situation, on the other hand, has always been complicated. My biological father, Javier, died in a construction accident when I was 8 years old. I have hardly any memories of him. When I was 12, my mother, Elena, married Esteban, an insurance salesman. And that's where the problems began. Elena hasn't worked since she married Esteban 15 years ago. She spends her time pretending to be the perfect wife while she squanders Esteban's money on pyramid schemes. She's been through at least 8. She spends a fortune on home decor and maintaining a luxurious image that doesn't match Esteban's income. They live in a mansion in an exclusive area that's clearly beyond their means, but for Elena, appearances matter more than common sense. My stepsister, Camila, is 22 and makes my mother look humble. She studies communications at an incredibly expensive private university, which basically means she spends her time partying and posting Instagram stories from Starbucks every day. Esteban covers all her expenses: tuition, apartment, BMW, credit cards, everything. Camila has never worked a single day and lives as if money falls from the sky. The difference between how she and I were treated was always brutal. She had the biggest room with a private bathroom. I lived in the basement. She got a car for her 16th birthday, while I got a lecture about responsibility and was told to buy one myself. When I finished school, Elena told me it was time to be independent and practically kicked me out. Camila is 22 and they're still paying for everything. On my father's side, there was my grandfather, Ruben. This is where this story really begins. Ruben was 84 years old when all this started. He was a retired construction worker who had lived in the same modest house for over 40 years. He was the complete opposite of what Elena valued: practical, frugal, straightforward, and indifferent to luxuries. He drove a Ford pickup truck that was 2 decades old. He'd been wearing the same work shoes for years, and his house hadn't been renovated since the 1980s. Elena detested him, and that's no exaggeration. She called him stingy, old-fashioned, and stubborn. He said he never helped when we needed him most. What he really meant was that Ruben wouldn't spend money on his own whims. I remember one Christmas when I was about 10 years old. Elena spent a fortune decorating the house, with professional lighting, garden decorations, everything. Then she asked Ruben for money to buy gifts because they'd already gone over budget. Ruben looked at all the expensive decorations and said, "Looks like you've decided what your priorities are." Elena was furious for months. She saw Ruben once or twice a year, usually at Christmas and maybe once in the summer. He wasn't the affectionate type. No hugs or childhood stories, but he always asked me what I did in shop class, if I was learning to fix things, or what my plans were after high school. When I started repairing cars at school, he became genuinely interested. She asked me about engines, tools, techniques. When I graduated, she gave me a box of her old construction tools. Elena rolled her eyes and said, "Great, more junk for your apartment." But those tools were high quality. I still use some of them today. In the last years of his life, I tried to visit him every few months. I helped him with minor repairs around the house. Elena always found an excuse not to go. "It makes me uncomfortable," she'd say. "It's very negative." The truth was, Ruben didn't flatter him or give him money. He died at 84, of a heart attack, in his garage while fixing up an old Chevy. And to be honest, I think that's how he would have wanted to go. The family's reaction was revealing. Elena posted a generic message on Facebook, "Sad to lose a loved one today. Ruben was taken from us far too soon. Please keep our family in your prayers." accompanied by an archive photo of clouds and angels. Nothing personal, no anecdotes. Camila didn't even mention his death, she was busy uploading photos of her coffee. Esteban barely murmured a, "I'm so sorry," at dinner and changed the subject to an insurance conference. The funeral was small. About 20 people, mostly old work colleagues and neighbors. I was the only family member present. When they asked me about the others, I made up excuses. My mother has migraines, my sister is busy with university. I felt ashamed. Ruben worked hard his whole life, and his own family didn't even bother to attend his funeral. I carried his coffin, was present throughout the service, and said a few words about what he taught me regarding the value of work and taking care of one's tools. After the service, several of his colleagues approached me. One of them, an older gentleman named Hector, told me something I'll never forget. "Your grandfather used to talk about you, you know. He said you were the only one in the family who understood what it meant to really work." I thought that was the final chapter of Ruben's story. A good man dies, the family moves on with their lives. I had no idea what was coming. 3 weeks after the funeral, it was an ordinary Tuesday. I'd spent the morning reconstructing the transmission of a Peterbilt and was just finishing up when my phone rang. Unknown number, but with a local area code. I usually ignore them, they're usually scams. But something compelled me to answer. "Hello," I said, "is this Mr. Daniel Romero?" A professional voice replied. "Yes, it's me." "Who's speaking?" "My name is Roberto Chen, of Chen and Associates. I was your grandfather Ruben Romero's lawyer. I need to talk to you about your will. Could you stop by my office this week?" I laughed, incredulous. A lawyer? Ruben had a lawyer. He lived as if he could barely make ends meet. He bought generic products, wore his clothes until they literally fell apart, and drove that old Ford pickup truck as if he had a special affection for it, even when it was barely hanging on. "Are you sure you're not mistaking him for someone else?" I asked skeptically. "Absolutely. Your paternal grandfather was Ruben Romero, right? And you're Javier Romero's son." "Yes, that's right." "Then I definitely need to talk to you. Could I meet this Thursday afternoon, say at 4 o'clock? I agreed, driven more by curiosity than anything else. I figured maybe Ruben had left me his tools or his truck. I couldn't imagine what else could be out there. That Thursday I arrived at the Chen and Associates office, which turned out to be in one of the most modern buildings downtown. Nothing like what I expected from someone representing my grandfather, who lived so modestly. I was still wearing my work uniform, stained with grease and with my name embroidered on the chest. I had come straight from the workshop. The receptionist looked me up and down when I mentioned I had an appointment with Mr. Chen regarding Ruben Romero's will. I could see what he was thinking on his face. This guy doesn't look like someone who's going to inherit anything important. Mr. Chen was the complete opposite of what I had imagined. An Asian man, in his mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with a corner office overlooking the city. He gave the impression of charging over $500 an hour. That only made everything seem stranger to me. "Daniel, please have a seat," he said, gesturing to a leather chair in front of his desk. "First, I'm sorry for your loss. Your grandfather was an exceptional person." "Thank you. But I have to ask, how could Ruben afford a lawyer like you? No offense, but this doesn't seem to be within the budget of someone who worked in construction his whole life." Chen smiled. His grandfather was a client of ours for over 20 years. He was always very careful with legal matters, especially with estate planning. And that brings me to the reason he's here. He opened a thick folder on his desk. "Ruben named you as the sole beneficiary of all his assets." I stared at him in silence. "What assets?" "He lived in a small house and drove an older truck than my sister." Chen's expression didn't change. He slid a document toward me. "Let me read you the inventory. Residential property at 447 Maple Street. Estimated value, $280,000. Free of mortgage." That made sense. It was a simple house, but well located. Savings and checking accounts totaling $190,000. I could hardly believe it. Did Ruben really have that much in the bank? Investment portfolio managed by Suave. Current value, $380,000. I couldn't believe it. An investment portfolio? A life insurance policy with Northwestern Mutual. Estimated payment, $150,000. This must be a mistake. I assure you it is not. His grandfather was extremely frugal and invested wisely for over 4 decades. He lived on a small portion of his income and invested the rest. He also inherited some money from his parents, which he also invested. Chen drew another roll. He was also very specific about the distribution. All for you, Daniel Romero. Not for your mother, not for your sister, not for your stepfather. Just for you. I felt stunned. But why me? I only saw him a few times a year. She left him a letter explaining her reasons. You can read it later if you wish. But now the important thing is for me to understand the process. There are legal procedures we need to complete, forms, account transfers, tax matters. For the next hour, Chen explained every detail to me. The succession process, tax implications, investment options. I could barely keep up. One more thing, she added at the end. Her grandfather feared that other family members might try to interfere. He left clear instructions in case anyone tried to contest the will. What kind of contests? Sometimes, people claim that the deceased was not of sound mind or that they were manipulated into changing their will. Ruben took steps to avoid those situations. I drove home completely stunned. $1 million. I repeated it out loud to make sure I wasn't dreaming. More than $1 million. That night I sat on the sofa with Rex, my dog, and reviewed the papers Chen had given me. Rex was looking at me with his head tilted to one side, as if he sensed something had changed. And that's when I made the worst mistake I could have made. I called my mother. I should have thought better of it. I should have given myself time to process it, maybe consulted a financial advisor, but I was confused and excited. I needed to tell someone. And, although we didn't always have the best relationship, Elena was technically part of the family and had known Ruben long before I had. Big mistake. Mom, you're not going to believe this. I just spoke with Ruben's lawyer. Ruben had a lawyer. She asked, surprised. Yes. And he had a will. He left me an inheritance. Oh, that's nice. Honey, how much money are we talking about? A few thousand. I took a deep breath. Much more than that. More than $1 million. There was such a long silence that I checked if the call was still active. What did you say? That he left me more than $1 million, Mom. Between the house, savings, investments, and insurance, it all adds up to about $1,035,000. Another pause. Then his tone of voice changed. It became almost childish. Forcedly cheerful. That's wonderful, darling. I'm happy for you. You must be in shock. I'm in shock. Should we celebrate? How about coming over for dinner on Sunday? We can talk about this great news. Talk about what? But since she sounded genuinely excited, I agreed. Sunday dinner was strange from the start. Elena made my favorite meal, though it was actually Camila's favorite. She used the fancy china, the kind they only brought out when we had guests. Esteban, my stepfather, was unusually friendly, asking about my job, complimenting my truck, as if he was suddenly interested in my life. Camila even stopped looking at her phone to pay attention to me. She asked me about the will, the lawyer, how the whole process worked. She seemed genuinely interested in every detail. After dinner, we moved to the lounge they usually reserved for special occasions. Elena brought coffee, settled into her favorite armchair, and said with a smile, "So, Daniel, I've been thinking about Ruben's will ever since you mentioned it." The whole thing left me puzzled. "But why are you so surprised?" I asked. Elena exchanged a glance with Esteban before answering. Well, honey, Ruben never seemed to take much interest in you while you were growing up. He barely saw you twice a year, didn't he? And when we really needed him, he wasn't there either. She was referring to that time when Esteban lost his job for absenteeism and they asked Ruben for help with the mortgage. Instead of supporting them, he suggested they sell Camila's BMW and cut back on expenses, since they were living beyond their means. Perhaps he now regretted not being more involved, I suggested. Elena's lips barely pursed, forcing a strained smile. Maybe, he admitted, but we have to be realistic. That money could help the whole family get by. And that was the real reason behind that conversation. Camila is in college and the costs are incredibly high. We've wanted to renovate the kitchen for years. Esteban's business has been slow. There are many expenses to cover, Elena said. Esteban nodded enthusiastically. Your mother is right, Daniel. The family needs to support each other. We could create a common fund and divide it among everyone. Divide what, exactly? I asked, already knowing the answer. The inheritance, of course, Elena replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's not like you really need all that money. You have a good job, you're single, no kids, and no big expenses. We do have real responsibilities. I felt an icy emptiness settling in my stomach. It's my inheritance, Mom. For a moment, Elena let her mask fall. Her smile crumbled and her gaze hardened. Then she resumed her usual honeyed tone. Don't be selfish, Daniel. Ruben could have put your name in the will. But that money represents decades of neglect of his family. The least you could do is share it with the people who were really there for you growing up. Take care of me? This woman kicked me out of the house when I turned 18 and left me to fend for myself. Besides, Camila chimed in, it's not fair that one person gets to keep everything just because some stubborn old man decided to do it that way. A stubborn old man. That's what he called our grandfather. I think I'd better go, I said, standing up. Wait, Daniel, Elena insisted, her tone sharper. Let's be reasonable. You can't really believe that Ruben wanted you to keep everything. He was older, probably confused. He was already heading out the door. We'll talk later, Mom. Daniel yelled behind me. Think about what's right. Think about your family. I drove back with my hands shaking. It wasn't fear. It was fury. I was naive to think they'd be happy for me. Of course they wanted the money. And of course they thought they deserved it more than I did. But I had no idea how far they would go to achieve it. The following days felt like a slow-motion ambush. It all started with a message from Camila at 7 a.m. the next day. Hey bro. I haven't stopped thinking about what we talked about last night. That thing with Grandpa was crazy, wasn't it? Hey, I'm having some tuition issues this semester. Do you think you could help me out with about $5,000? You know, family helping family. $5,000. Like a tip. I didn't reply. An hour later, another message. Did you see what I wrote to you? It's urgent. Then my uncle Ricardo, Elena's brother, called me. A man I speak to once a year, at family parties. Daniel, your mother told me about the inheritance. That's great news, really. Hey, I don't know if you knew, but my construction company has been struggling since the pandemic. I thought maybe we could partner up. You put up the capital and we split the profits half and half. Partner up? With my inheritance. Then cousins, uncles-in-law, and even distant acquaintances started showing up. Elena's sister wanted help with her medical bills. Esteban's brother-in-law asked me to help out with his son's baseball team. People I hadn't spoken to in years started worrying about me. But the worst was Elena. At first, she called me several times a day. When I stopped answering, she started sending me increasingly long messages, full of guilt and sentimentality, talking about family duties and the common good. When I stopped reading them, it escalated. It was Thursday afternoon. I was working under the hood of a Kenworth, when my supervisor, Javier, approached me with a scowl. "Daniel, there's a woman outside claiming to be your mother. They insist it's a family emergency." I came out covered in grease, and there was Elena, standing in the middle of the auto shop, wearing white pants and heels, raising her voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Daniel Morrison, we need to talk right now. It's about your grandfather's will, and you're being completely irrational." All the technicians stopped to stare at us. My face burned with embarrassment. "Ma'am, this is a workplace," I said quietly. "You can't introduce yourself like that. Don't call me ma'am. I'm your mother, and you're making a huge mistake." Ruben was definitely not in his right mind when he wrote that. Any sensible person would share that money with their family. My supervisor intervened. "Ma'am, you must leave. You're disrupting our work." "I'm not leaving until my son stops acting selfishly," she yelled, "and thinks about his family." 2 security guards had to come and escort her out as she continued shouting. "This isn't over, Daniel. That money belongs to this family. You'll regret being so greedy." Half the workshop heard him. I wanted to disappear. The rest of the day, my colleagues looked at me uncomfortably. That night, Elena began her crusade on social media. She posted an old black and white photo of Ruben, probably the only one she had of him, with a dramatic caption, "Thinking about family." Sometimes, some people only value money over real connections. Praying for wisdom and healing. Family first. The comments came pouring in. Friends from church, moms from the neighborhood group, all expressing their support and outrage. How sad. Money changes people. Some forget where they came from. Camila also joined in, but on Instagram. She posted photos of her university bills, accompanied by phrases like, "I wish some people cared about family education." Money reveals who's really with you. I guess disappointing them doesn't make you any less of a part of this family. Or does it? She also posted a picture of Ruben with the message, "I miss you, Grandpa. I wish you could see what your money is doing to this family." The manipulation was so blatant it made my stomach churn. Then, Elena started a campaign through a group chat. He created a family chat that included Camila, Esteban, Uncle Ricardo, and several cousins. The first message read, "I just want to remind you that this isn't about greed or envy. It's about family unity and doing the right thing." Some seem to have forgotten the values Ruben tried to teach us, sharing and caring for one another. I hope some people remember who raised them and who will be there when the money runs out. Certain people. Very subtle, Mom. The replies came quickly. Uncle Ricardo replied, "I totally agree, Elena. Family should come first." Camila wrote, "I don't understand how someone can be so selfish." And cousins I barely knew joined in too, "Thinking of you, Elena. This must be very difficult." I wanted to respond, defend myself, point out the hypocrisy, and remind them that none of them attended Ruben's funeral. But I knew immediately that was exactly what they wanted, to provoke a reaction from me that would make them portray me as unstable or guilty. Instead of falling into their trap, I took screenshots of every message and opened a documentation folder on my phone. Something told me I would soon need proof of this harassment. 2 weeks after the family pressure campaign began, the situation escalated alarmingly. I returned home from work to find a certified letter waiting for me. It wasn't from Ruben's lawyer, but from an unknown law firm, Williamson, Burke and Associates. The envelope contained a formal notice of intent to contest Ruben Romero's will. My heart pounded as I tried to decipher the legal language. Elena had hired lawyers to try to take my inheritance away. They claimed that Ruben wasn't in his right mind when he wrote the will, that I had exerted undue influence over him, and that the document should be considered invalid. I knew it was absurd, but it was also terrifying. I had no idea how these legal processes worked or what the consequences could be. I immediately called Ruben's lawyer, Mr. Roberto Chin. "Daniel, I was expecting your call," he said calmly. "This morning your mother's lawyers contacted us to notify us of their intention to contest the will. Can they do it? Can they really take my money? They can try. But your grandfather foresaw this situation. That's why he was so meticulous with the paperwork. What kind of documentation? A video recording of the signing of the will, with 2 witnesses present. Recent medical certificates attesting to his mental capacity. And detailed notes explaining why he distributed the inheritance in that way. He paused before continuing. He also hired a private investigator to document any attempts at coercion or harassment against you. What? Really? Reuben was a very shrewd man, Daniel. I knew your mother very well. She had been planning this for over 2 years. We agreed to meet that same evening at her office. When I arrived, Roberto had several thick files open on his desk. Let me show you what your grandfather had arranged, he said. The first thing was the video showing Reuben signing the will in Roberto's office, about 6 months before his death. In the footage, he appeared completely lucid, answering questions clearly and explicitly stating that he was leaving everything to me because I was the only one who had never asked him for anything and that he valued my effort and hard work. Then he showed me the medical reports, a comprehensive cognitive exam performed just 8 weeks before his death. The results confirmed that he was in full possession of his mental faculties, with no signs of deterioration or dementia. But this is the most interesting part, Roberto added, opening another document. Reuben had hired Patricia Williams, a private investigator with a background as a detective, to closely monitor my family's behavior after his death. He handed me a card with her name and profession. As she explained to me, Patricia had gathered evidence of calls, social media posts, and even an incident at my workplace. Is that legal? Everything she documented happened in public spaces or was posted online. It's completely legal and very useful for our case. Finally, Roberto pulled out a letter Reuben had written to me, which I hadn't read yet. Daniel, if you're reading this, it's because Elena is behaving exactly as I imagined. Don't let yourself be manipulated. That woman didn't care about me while I was alive, and she doesn't deserve anything now that I'm dead. You were the only one who treated me like a person, not like an ATM. Use this money to build something good. Don't let the scavengers destroy you. I left you all the tools to defend yourself. Reuben, despite the stress, couldn't help but let out a short laugh. It was exactly the kind of message Reuben would write. There's more, Roberto said. He included a special clause in his will. Anyone who challenges the inheritance automatically loses any rights to it. And if the challenge is deemed frivolous, they will have to cover all legal costs, both their own and those of others. What does that mean? That if your mother loses, and she will, she'll pay not only her lawyers, but ours as well. It could easily cost her more than $30,000. The next morning, I received a call from Elena. Her voice sounded different, harsher, less affected. Daniel, we need to talk in person. Just family. No lawyers. We can work this out like adults. There's nothing to work out, Mom. I'm asking you nicely. Come for dinner on Sunday. Come just this once. Hungry and with an open mind. There was something in his tone that made me suspicious. It seemed like another trap. Is that okay? I said, but I'll go with someone. With whom? You'll see. I hung up and immediately called Patricia Williams. On Sunday, I drove to Elena's house with Patricia in the passenger seat. She was exactly what you'd expect from a former detective turned private investigator. A woman in her 50s, firm, direct, with keen eyes that missed nothing. Remember, she told me before I got out of the car, they're going to try to pressure you into signing something. Don't do it. Don't accept any agreement. And let me handle any legal matters. Elena opened the door with that rehearsed smile she always used to feign composure, but it vanished as soon as she saw the woman with me. Daniel, it's so good to see you, darling. And who's with you? She asked in a forced, friendly tone. This is Patricia Williams. She came to observe our family conversation. Observe what exactly? Elena asked, clearly uncomfortable. Whatever's going on here, I replied simply. Elena clenched her jaw, though she kept smiling. Well, come in then. The dining room table looked more like a meeting room than a place for a family meal. On the tablecloth were notepads, folders, and legal documents. Seated were Elena, Esteban, Camila, and my uncle Ricardo. At the head of the table stood two men in elegant suits, strangers to me. Everything seemed carefully arranged. "Daniel, please take a seat," Elena said, gesturing to the chair that had been placed directly in front of the rest of the group. I sat down without saying anything. Patricia remained standing behind me, with her arms crossed. Esteban cleared his throat, as if he were about to preside over a board meeting. "Daniel, we brought in some professionals to help us handle the inheritance issue fairly for everyone." One of the men introduced himself as the family lawyer. He began with a speech about harmony, family unity, and equitable distribution, mentioning that they had drafted a new agreement that, according to him, would resolve the situation amicably. "We understand that Ruben included you in his will," the lawyer said, "but we believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding his true intentions. This document proposes the creation of a family trust to distribute the funds fairly among everyone." He slid a stack of thick papers across the table. I didn't even look at them. "What would my percentage be in that fair distribution?" I asked. Elena quickly answered. 25%. That's a very generous amount considering you're just one person and there are several members with legitimate needs. 25% of the inheritance I was left? It's not really yours, Camila Condestin interrupted. Grandpa was definitely confused. He barely knew you. That comment hurt, but I kept my cool. What if I refuse to sign this? The lawyer spoke up. We'd prefer to avoid litigation, but we have grounds to contest the will, based on Ruben's age and possible mental decline. There could have been undue influence. Undue influence on my part? I replied incredulously. Elena's face was beginning to fall. Daniel, don't be so complicated. This is for the good of the family. Ruben didn't understand family unity, but we did. We're just trying to correct his mistake. Was her mistake leaving me money? Her mistake, Elena said, now unfiltered, was entrusting everything to someone who doesn't understand family obligations. Do you fix trucks? What do you know about managing this kind of money? Of course, so you can invest it, I replied. Like Camila's fraternity parties or your kitchen renovation. Elena turned red with rage. How dare you? We raised you. We gave you a home. We support you. I burst out laughing, not from joy. It was that kind of laugh you get when everything is so absurd it seems like a bad joke. Did you raise me? You kicked me out of the house at 18, telling me to fend for myself. You gave me a home. You sent me to the basement while Camila had the master bedroom with a private bathroom. Did they support me? They've never supported anything I do. I took my phone out of my pocket and turned to Patricia. Are you recording everything? She nodded with a strained smile. Every word. Elena went pale. Recording what? Everything. The pressure, the threats, the emotional manipulation. Ruben knew this was going to happen. That's why he hired Patricia to document every attempt at coercion. I looked at the lawyer. Did my mother tell you that she came to my workplace to confront me? Or about the social media messages? And about the family campaign to pressure me? The lawyer swallowed hard. We had no knowledge of any harassment allegations. Well, now you know. And there's something you should know about Ruben's will. It has a very specific clause. Anyone who tries to challenge it automatically forfeits any future inheritance rights. And if the challenge is deemed frivolous, as in this case, they will have to pay all legal costs, including mine. I took the agreement that had been slipped to me, looked at it for the first time, and calmly tore it in two. So go ahead, take me to court. I'd love to see you explain to a judge why you think you deserve the money of a man you didn't even bother to visit when he was dying. Elena was trembling. This isn't fair. That money should be shared. We're family. No, I said as I walked toward the door. You're just people I share DNA with. A real family would have been happy that Reuben thought of me to give me the fruit of his life. A real family would have supported me. I didn't try to steal from you. I stopped right before leaving. Oh, and Elena, if you or anyone here contacts me again about this inheritance, Patricia will press charges for harassment. Good luck with the lawsuit. I heard lawyers are very expensive these days. I left that house feeling lighter than I had in a long time. 6 months later, my life was completely different. The trial went exactly as Roberto Chin, Reuben's lawyer, had anticipated. Elena's legal representatives withdrew the lawsuit after reviewing all of Patricia's documentation and Reuben's records. Not only did they lose the case, but the judge declared their appeal frivolous and ordered them to cover all legal expenses. Elena ended up with a debt of $42,000. And that was just the beginning of her troubles. I followed Reuben Romero's advice and learned how to invest wisely. I put most of my money into index funds and real estate. I bought a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing ostentatious, but it was cozy and fully paid off. I also treated myself to a new truck and started a small side business, restoring classic cars. For the first time in my life, I felt like things were really okay. And then, fate decided to deliver a bit of poetic justice. Esteban was fired from his job at the insurance company in a way that left everyone talking. It turned out he'd been inflating claims for years and pocketing the difference. The company not only fired him but also filed charges against him. He lost his license, his reputation, and faced potential criminal prosecution. Without Esteban's income, Helena's fragile house of cards immediately collapsed. The mansion was mortgaged to the max. Camila's BMW still had 2 years of payments remaining. The credit cards were maxed out after so many years of living beyond their means. The foreclosure notice arrived 3 months after Esteban was fired. Camila had to drop out of private university and enrolled in a community college. The BMW was repossessed. They moved to a small apartment in a bad neighborhood. Uncle Ricardo's construction business went bankrupt because he had been relying on family money to stay afloat. She declared bankruptcy and moved back in with her elderly mother. Meanwhile, I was having the time of my life. I had started dating Sarah, an amazing woman who worked at a local bank. We traveled together, went out to dinner, and lived without financial worries. Furthermore, in Reuben's honor, I founded a scholarship program for young people interested in technical trades. To apply, students had to write an essay about how they had overcome adversity and what the value of hard work meant to them. I felt it was something my grandfather would have completely agreed with. That's when Elena reappeared. At first, I only saw her from afar, at the supermarket or the gas station, always with a tired, tense expression. She had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. Her hair was styled differently, in a cheaper way, without the expensive treatments she used to wear. She worked in a department store, which must have been a direct blow to her pride. I would pass her, but she avoided looking at me. I knew it was only a matter of time before necessity overcame pride. And so it did. The call came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. "Daniel, please, we need to talk," she said in an unrecognizable, weak tone, with an urgency I'd never heard from her before. "I thought we had nothing more to say to each other," I replied coldly. "Just one coffee, just once, I beg you," she insisted. Against all logic, or perhaps driven by a certain curiosity to see how far she had fallen, I agreed to meet her at a downtown coffee shop. As soon as I walked in, I noticed she was unrecognizable, visibly older, visibly worn, wearing inexpensive designer clothes instead of the luxurious outfits she used to wear. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 6 months. "Daniel, I made mistakes." "Serious mistakes, I'm sorry," she said as I sipped my coffee without saying a word. "Esteban and I are going through a divorce. Did you know we lost our house? Camila can barely afford her studies. I work in sales earning a little over $12 an hour. I can't make ends meet." I listened to her, impassive. "I know I made a mistake with the inheritance. I know Reuben wanted you to have it. I acted out of fear, greed, stupidity, but mostly out of fear," she said through real tears, not fake ones. I'm behind on the rent. My car is about to be repossessed. I don't know where we're going to live. Camila is thinking of dropping out of school altogether. I let her cry for a moment before speaking. And what do you want from me, Helena? I'm not asking for much. Just enough to stabilize me. Maybe I could help Camila out a little with college. I know I don't deserve it, but we're family. Blood is thicker than water, he said, reaching out as if trying to touch mine. I know you have a good heart, Daniel. You're not going to leave your family on the street. I pulled my hand away and leaned toward her. You're right about that, Helena. You don't deserve it. Daniel, please. You had 28 years to treat me like a son. You didn't. You had months to face Ruben's death with dignity. And instead, you tried to steal from me, harass me, manipulate me, even drag me into court. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You went after the money thinking you'd struck gold with Esteban. And when that failed, you tried to take what was mine. Now that you have nothing, you want to appeal to family ties? I stood up and left a coffee bill on the table. This is what's going to happen. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to tell Camila, Ricardo, and whoever else you can think of to leave me alone too. You're going to keep your sales job, your cheap apartment, and your life. Because I'm no longer your emergency solution. Helena burst into tears, unable to hide her feelings. Please, Daniel. I beg you. I'll do anything. I'll kneel if you want. I need help. Anything is fine. I headed for the exit without looking back, but something made me stop. I turned to her one last time. By the way, Helena, I said as I pulled an envelope from inside my jacket. I left it on the table without saying a word. She picked it up with trembling hands, opened it carefully, and inside she found a simple $1 bill next to a handwritten note. She didn't need to read it to know who had written it. Her eyes filled with tears as she recognized Ruben's handwriting. I simply watched her reaction for a moment, then turned away without waiting for a reply. I left the cafe with a firm step, without guilt, without doubt. The sound of rain hitting the windows faded away, along with the whispers of his regret. As I climbed into my truck, I knew I wouldn't answer his calls or pleas again. Not out of resentment, but because I finally understood that you can't save someone who was always willing to drag you down for their own gain. I started the engine, turned on the radio, and drove on, leaving behind not only Helena, but everything she represented. It was time to live my life without looking back.